safe when it comes to lightning? Well, when the thunder roars, go indoors. That's why we say it all the time, because the first sound of thunder, you often have plenty of time to react before that lightning actually gets to you. Now, even if it rumbles, right, you hear that slow rumble off in the distance, any sound of thunder means lightning is close enough to strike. And that's why we want to make sure that you are not outside when that happens, because that's where most of the lightning deaths and injuries occur. Now, lightning itself, it can cause issues too, because we're going to be talking about the third leading cause of death from any weather-related source. So it is obviously going to be a pretty compelling scenario, and one that all of us have to endure all summer long. There might be storms of other types. You think, I don't have to worry about blizzards. I live in Florida, you know, or vice versa for hurricanes if you're well inland. But lightning itself, that's a unifier here that we're all subjected to. So we want to make sure that you are staying as safe as possible, particularly starting when that thunder roars.
Thank you, Brandon, for that. Yeah, very, very important to not be outside when there's lightning. Of course, the old saying, when thunder roars, go indoors. You definitely don't want to be outside during activity like that, because you could run into quite a bit of issues, certainly, as you're dealing with lightning and thunder out there. So remember, when thunder roars, go indoors. That's the old saying. Let's move on to our heat. That's why a lot of us are watching here, and that's kind of the next thing that's headed our way. I want you to notice back to the west here on our water vapor satellite, we've got this building heat dome right here, where we're seeing the wind kind of take a turn down, dipping out west, and then moving back to the north further to the east. And that is where that summer-like heat will be set to move on in here. Again, water vapor satellite's a really good tool to show us kind of what's headed our way. And we're definitely going to be seeing those hot and humid conditions, very summer-like conditions, begin to work their way back into the area and cause us some issues. Another first alert weather day that we'll be seeing here thanks to this heat dome of high pressure is what we like to call it right here. And as the surface high pressure that I mentioned earlier works its way off to the east, we're going to start to see some of these southerly winds on here. In fact, we'll show you here. There's that high pressure right there. It works off to the east, and what we'll continue to see here is the development of quite a bit of extra heat moving back into the area and hot conditions that just no one likes to see. It's not going to feel all that great over much of the region. So luckily, it will be a nicer day for your day tomorrow. We will take that. Again, that high pressure will be back to the north here, and that will allow us to see some slightly cooler conditions. It's not going to be overly cool, but temperatures will be back into the middle and upper 80s. So we'll take that over the region for sure, and that's just in time for lots of events that will be happening tomorrow. Let's take a look at what we could be seeing. Again, with that high pressure in control, all this rain that we're seeing down in Kentucky fades away. We're seeing plenty of that sunshine and just beautiful, beautiful conditions heading into your day tomorrow, and that will lead to great, great weather that's headed our way. And so meteorologist Hannah Hayes has a look at our zone-by-zone forecast and spotlighting one of the events that's happening around the region tomorrow.
Thank you, Nick. Let's go ahead and check out that forecast for tomorrow. Several events across the region this week. Starting in southern Ohio, temperature is going to be into the 80s. And of course, for there in MacArthur, Benton County, it is going to be feeling into the 70s by noon. It is going to be a warm day, but lots of sunshine across the region tomorrow. It'll be very pleasant for really any outdoor activities, going to the park, going to the fair, whatever you plan on doing tomorrow. Going to have a lot of sun, and temperature is going to be into the upper 80s, low 90s for some of us across the region. So feeling, of course, very warm, but not going to feel abnormally warm for this time of year. So just plan on keeping yourself hydrated and taking breaks in the shade if you need to. But overall, tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day for anything that you have planned.
Thank you, Hannah, for that. It's going to be a great time at the Vinton County Junior Fair tomorrow with all that nice weather. Temperatures in the 70s and 80s. Could not complain too much about that. We haven't had a whole lot of fantastically nice weather so far this summer. So it's going to be great to see. Let's go back to our weather graphics, and I'll kind of show you after. Again, once this high pressure kicks eastward, we're really going to see the return of the heat and the humidity thanks to southerly winds pumping in that heat and humidity. And that's going to allow that heat dome to build. Notice this orange color right here, how it just expands, centers over our area by Thursday, and really just makes that temperature just skyrocket over much of the region. And that's going to be the biggest issue that we're going to be dealing with for the end of the week. In fact, when you factor in the humidity on top of middle and upper 90s, those heat indices or feels like temperatures are going to be skyrocketing. Upper 90s, lower triple digits likely by Wednesday into Thursday. Thursday is the only first alert weather day so far. We may need some more, granted, because of how hot it's going to feel on Friday and on Saturday. But upper 90s, lower triple digits right on the border. We'll continue to watch this, and if the numbers do change, we'll let you know and maybe give you more first alert weather days. That's, of course, the National Weather Service model. This is the European model, and it's showing much of the same thing. Heat index prognosticated of 98 over Huntington, 100 over Portsmouth. These numbers aren't verbatim. Remember, this is model data, but generally when they're in this much agreement, you can say it's a safe bet that those feels like temperatures are going to be well up into the upper 90s, lower triple digits, even into Saturday too. This is where we differ. Again, we may need first alert weather days going into Saturday. American model showing much of the same thing with those upper 90s, lower triple digits feels like temperatures. And remember, that's due to the fact that we're not really sweating. The sweat tries to help us cool off, but when it gets ridiculously humid outside, our sweat doesn't evaporate from our body and we stay very, very hot. And this heat's going to be a region-wide issue here. Let's go back to that. Really, the only safe spots are going to be into the mountains right here, into eastern West Virginia, western Virginia, North Carolina, and up into the northeast right here. Myrtle Beach looks pretty good too, so if you do want to get some safety from that heat, Myrtle Beach might be a good spot to go to. Now let's widen out, take a look at the precipitation picture going into next week. We got a few disturbances trying to make their way through. Again, remember, this is the heat dome right here. This is where all the hot conditions are going to be, right in the center of this. But up here, our jet stream is getting a little close. We have this little disturbance right in here. It's going to try to make its way through on Friday. And a couple more disturbances may try to make their way through as well. Sunday, we're showing a minor disturbance trying to move through. You look for those little wiggles in the lines here, as well as kind of turning of the winds in the jet stream like that, which is definitely what we're seeing there. As we head into Monday and Tuesday next week, that's where we could get relief. That's the European model. Let's go back to the American model, and it shows much of the same thing. Again, the heat dome overhead much of the day on Thursday and Friday to the south, but we have these little wiggles here that could create some showers and thunderstorms. In fact, this is a classic derecho pattern that we will have to watch because these disturbances just feed into very hot and humid conditions within that heat dome. And by next week, we might, keyword is might, get a little bit cooler and a little bit better as we head into that time frame. So there is at least some maybe good news on the horizon, but it's not looking all that certain around the region. Let's take a look at our futurecast. This is the European model. Again, we'll start to see a little bit of activity kind of blossom up on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and as well Tuesday with those little disturbances coming through. And if we get enough hot and humid air, that's where we're going to have to watch for some stronger storms. European model showing that. The American model showing much of the same thing. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday as our next best storm threat, and that's what we'll have to watch. Tony Cavalier has info on that derecho pattern, the infamous Ring of Fire.
Here's what happens. The pattern blossoms this huge ridge in the upper atmosphere, and I want you to watch because around that ridge run thunderstorms. They're called Ring of Fire. They go around the ring of the heat. And this is a prime pattern for derechos in America, where heat builds, and on the edge of the heat, especially along and north of I-70, 80, and 90, the farther north you go, these squall lines of thunderstorms move. They feed on the thermodynamic heat of the big wave of heat that's coming in. Thermo, heat, dynamic energy. There'll be plenty of heat energy for thunderstorms and maybe a couple derechos next week, mainly to our north. although in the hot and humid environment that we will reside in next week.
So it's safe to say that during this time of year, derechos are more common up to the north, up along I-80 and I-90 like Tony was mentioning, but it's certainly a possibility. We've seen it before. June 29th, 2012, for instance, where we saw that mega derecho come through, do a lot of damage. So we'll have to watch it. As long as those disturbances are through, there's the possibility. The good news is the winds aloft look fairly weak, so storm organization looks fairly minimal for that time frame. But again, we'll have to keep an eye on it, and we'll have to continue to see what exactly we'll be looking at. All right, the long-term pattern here, it does not look too promising in terms of a cool down, unfortunately, but it doesn't look quite as hot as what we're going to be seeing on Thursday. So let's set the map in motion right here. I want you to notice again, this is a classic heat scenario with all this cold air just bottled up to the north and up into Alaska. We call this a positive Eastern Pacific oscillation right here. This is a positive Arctic oscillation and positive North Atlantic oscillation. So all of the cold air is bottled up to the north. And meanwhile, further to the south, this is where the heat's going to be. We've been talking about that. It's going to be a very, very hot next couple of days and into next week. Now, let's pause here. I'm going to take off the circle, and I want you to notice this little dip down, this little dive down of some of this cooler air. This is where that North Atlantic oscillation could become a little negative for us as we see a breakup of the polar vortex. And I know it's summertime. We don't really talk about the polar vortex during summertime, but yes, the polar vortex does in fact exist during the summertime. When you see this nudge of warm air up here in the Arctic Circle, we're going to be able to see that cool air dive down. So looks like in the very long term, we could start to see some relief from this excessive heat and humidity. And we'll take a closer look at this. Again, we showed you this earlier with that heat dome and just that ugly weather. But notice once we head toward the end of next week, things might start to get a little bit better for us, and we could see maybe some relief in terms of temperatures not being quite as hot. Still could be on the hot side in the upper 80s and lower 90s, but we may not be talking about middle and upper 90s during that time. Climate Prediction Center, next 6 to 10 days, so this would be between the 31st and, well, no, the 20... math is not mathing right now. The 27th through the 31st of July, through the end of the month, showing very, very above average temperatures here, where we will be very warm. And that takes into effect, of course, next week, or the end of this week, I should say, where we're going to be very hot. And it still looks to be above average in terms of rainfall as well. So not a whole lot of relief in terms of that rain. But we'll take it after last summer where we had a very, very potent drought that has still been overhead. Super 7-day forecast. Here we go. Let's obviously highlight that Thursday time frame here because that's where that heat is going to be. Those rain chances aren't going to be too high on Thursday. There will be enough humidity for the potential of some heat here or there, but ultimately the rain chances aren't going to be too bad. Those feels like temperatures, though, getting back into the middle and upper 90s, and that's not going to feel all that great. Friday, 9th Street Live. Last week, I should say, that had some trouble getting off and about because we had a lot of rain. Pullman Square also had some trouble getting off and about, but this Friday looks a lot better. Temperatures will be back into the 90s, so it will be hot for the start, but by the end of the concert, we're back into the middle and upper 80s. Looking a little bit better there. This is First Alert Weather Plus. We give you all the updates on what you need to know in terms of the long-term forecast, give you that first alert, and get a little technical with you every Monday at around 6:45 p.m. We'll continue to keep you updated on everything. Follow us on socials. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Snyder. Brandon Butcher is Brandon Butcher. Tony Cavalier is Tony Cavalier, and meteorologist Hannah Hayes is Hannah's Facebook page. We'll air on YouTube, of course. We air on all digital platforms, so if you want to see us there, be sure to subscribe and like if you're watching on YouTube, and be sure to share this with your friends. Tell everybody about it. We'll continue to keep you updated on the situation with the heat as we move forward on air, online, and, of course, on your cell phone as well. In the meantime, make it a fantastic Monday, everybody.